Hello, good afternoon. We're talking about today about where we're happy to see here one of the most respected immigration lawyers in the North Houston area to talk about the success of your case. Luis Hess. He's a son of immigrants himself. Luis is a Juris Doctor with a certificate in health law from St. Louis University. He also holds a of Arts in International Relations with a specialization in statistical methodology from the University of Arizona, where he graduated summa cum laude. Additionally, he earned a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy, Political Science, and Economics from St. Louis University, and he also graduated summa cum laude. He has been top rated by Super Lawyers and Hustonia, among other organizations. Luis's definition of success is not the result of a random series of events. For him, it begins with a dream, a goal, or an ambition, and it ends with self guided results. The bridge that connects those dreams and goals to the final result is linked by grit, determination, and perseverance. Thank you, Luis, for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Fantastic. Well, we want to know about who Luis is. So, can you share a little bit about your background and what inspired you to become an immigration lawyer?
Sure. So I've always I spent most of my childhood traveling between the U.S. and Mexico, oftentimes just visiting relatives down there. And one of the things that struck out at me early on is that while those foreign nationals who happen to have some type of legal status. At the time, my mother was a permanent resident. She didn't become a U.S. citizen until I was in my late 20s, which was surprisingly 20 years ago, almost at this point. I do remember crossing the border and always getting harassed by Customs and Border Patrol.
Wow.
That they would just treat her as a second-class citizen just because she wasn't a U.S. citizen. And all of us have gone through the experience of dealing with people at the airport. None of us truly enjoy the experience of being patted down, being treated as if we're a terrorist, being treated as if we're going to do something illegal or dangerous. And so when a foreign national basically has to put up with how they're being treated, it's simply a difference, and it's not it's an asymmetric relationship. That is, all the powers vested in the government official, whether they're truthful or not, whether they're rude or nice, whether they're a good person or they're good at their job or not. We're basically left taking it as it is.
Right.
I enjoy the idea. I enjoy being a lawyer because I feel I can step in and provide a voice for those who cannot have a voice. One of the things I truly hate is bullies. We've all dealt with them in one fashion or another, personal life, professional life, and I have no love for bullies. And so being a lawyer allows me to not only protect myself, my family, but also allows me to protect those who need it. And so foreign nationals tend to be one of those demographics that you don't know the law. You don't. It's a foreign land, foreign country.
Right.
And providing a guidance and if you would, a strong voice is what allows me, what motivates me to get up every day and do my job.
Wow, that's very interesting. And do you think that the problems with the bullies, like you mentioned, in general, like professionally, have increased or decreased over the years?
I don't think there's really a difference. I would say this: you see, there's a tendency for those in power, whatever power
Right.
might be, to bully.
Right.
And it's not just the federal government. I mean, you can certainly look at interactions that you and I and other people might have, let's say with a driving violation. We get pulled over, and you have the police, and they sit there, and they'll try to get you to admit to doing something wrong. And
Right.
hear of people being brutalized for not playing along. I've been an intern for almost 15 years now, and I've seen in all areas. I've done criminal defense, I've done personal injury, worked for the U.S. government and state government at various points in time. And there's always those in power who like to abuse it just because of the laws around it. That being that government officials basically can do whatever they want to do with qualified immunity, meaning that even if they do something illegal, they're not going to go to prison. They're not going to lose money.
Right.
They're not demoted. So the idea of bullies being any different now and then, I don't think so. I think it's just better known. I think people are more open to talking about it. I think, in my perspective, I think you hear far more cases of people being put in, if you went to the cuartito over in Bush
Right. Yes.
And it's just better known. Now, can I prove it? No. But from my perspective, I would say it's always been that way. Being bullies in the 80s,
Right.
90s, last 10, 15 years, I think it's always been there. But I don't think it's a difference in perspective. I think it's just people have a better feel for what their rights are and are more willing to push to assert their rights. And so, and unfortunately, the way the law is stacked, I think the U.S. government holds all the cards for the most part. It's
Right.
our job as attorneys, as legal professionals, to provide a strategy. Now, the strategy is a strategy. It's not always, you could always second guess yourself, but there's always an opportunity to at least provide an option to do better than what the default is, which is doing nothing.
Right. And well, I think that from your position is one of the things that you do with your clients that I can attest to that is that you educate your client and you let them know what the rights are and what the best path is to achieve their goals, their immigration goals. So that's very important because the system can get very confusing, right?
So yeah, it's never. I mean, there are a lot of whenever I hear of immigration requirements in Europe or even Canada, they have a point system. The rules are very well laid out. Right. Versus here in the United States, it's somewhat secretive. Now, I've always found it odd that there's no rhyme or reason how H-1B visas are selected, for instance. It just seems at random. And then I've been having done this for long enough. What seems a surprise is when immigration violates their own rules. An example I can easily give is that when an immigration lawyer files here in the U.S., typically they deal with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS.
Right.
And sometimes USCIS will give a response back to an application saying, hey, we're requesting additional information, RFE. Sometimes the RFEs are ridiculous. They're asking for information they already have. Sometimes you can see why they're asking for information because perhaps something wasn't clear to the officer. So be it. But you respond addressing whatever the concerns are, A, B, and C. And then you get a response letter saying, okay, we're going to deny you based on E. There's the issue that they're denying you on, it was never an issue that they brought up. And
right.
You're not allowed to do that. It's the equivalent of saying, you need to get your car fixed, and you go to the shop and they tell you, okay, you need a new battery. Okay, here's money for the battery. As you're driving out, it's like, oh no. And at the same time, you need to change your tires. Well, that was never something that was discussed.
Right.
But
absolutely,
immigration violates their own rules, and so it's just a result of the U.S. government just not following their own standards, and so it keeps us busy for good or bad. But if they made it easy, everybody wouldn't need a lawyer. That's essentially part
exactly. Exactly. And I've heard people say that that the government may have like a a certain number of rejections that they have to make. I don't know if that's true, or I mean that they have to reject the process or the case.
Well, it yes and no. I don't know it's true. So the immigration will publish statistics. They'll
Right.
publish how many people they've approved. And so, like for some of the more difficult self-sponsored green cards, there are green cards that exist out there. Two major categories that where a person has either a very successful career in EB-1A or has some type of special skill needed for the U.S. government, which is, let's say, an EB-2 national interest waiver. They publish those, and you see over time that the percentage in raw number of applications have been decreasing over time. Now, that can be a reflection of stricter rules or stricter interpretation of the law. It could also be a reflection of the rise of the notario. You certainly see on Facebook or other social media postings people who aren't lawyers offering legal services. They are what you'll see them referred to as professional immigration form fillers, or you'll see them listed as notario, because obviously here in the United States, anybody can be a notario. There's nothing really special about it versus Mexico, where it's a far more stringent system. And so I see far more people hiring legal services for that. In fact, I had two sets of people I had consultations with earlier this week. One was an individual out of Las Vegas. He was trying to do an EB-1A. He had met a lot of the requirements, publications, high salary, awards, things of that nature. It was a very solid case. Another one was just an American who married a Mexican national. She came legally. There were no criminal issues, immigration issues. Very, very straightforward. But in both cases, they went with a notario because the notario was just a cheaper cost. And notarios do not have the same requirements as attorneys. They were held to a higher standard. So for better, for worse, those notarios may do a good job, they may not. And I think that contributes to the increase in raw numbers of people being rejected for different types of applications. What's odd in all of this is that there are other companies that offer legal services that aren't lawyers. I'll give an example. Some of the bigger oil and gas companies here in Houston use law firms for their immigration, for bringing foreign nationals from Venezuela, Colombia, Europe, Asia, wherever it happens to be, to the United States. Instead, they'll hire a consulting firm, take PricewaterhouseCoopers, McKinley. They have consultants, and they'll bring. But these consultants within the companies will do the immigration work. They don't hire outside. At least I've gotten that from general counsel of some of these oil and gas companies, because I've inquired, hey, who what's the process of hiring local counsel? And for our company, for instance, we are listed as a minority-owned business with the state of Texas. We have all of the certificates that would indicate that we are a minority-owned business. And there's some contracts can be given based on that, and there's some of these companies do care of it. But in the case of my example, it's like no, we're just going to go with the consulting company. It's like I find it very odd in that the rules are typically very strict about giving legal advice, and yet you have high-end, high-profile companies who offer services, and then if you would, people who got some type of training online, hang out a ad, say, hey, I'm a professional immigration form filler, and people will just hire. So so raw numbers are a reflection of that type of competition, because while it's supposed to be regulated by the state bar is not doing anything about that.
Right, I see, and yeah, I can picture what you're saying, because it happens to us too, and and I find it odd that these large corporations that you would think they have the budget to do things right, and and now that I think about it, it may not even be a budget issue because paying these consultants is very expensive.
Yeah.
And it's like when a company tells us, oh no, I don't need a translation company because my engineer is doing the translation. It's like, it doesn't make sense. The engineer should not be doing translation because it's very expensive for you as a company to be doing that with your staff.
Well, the question becomes, where's the what are the rates in terms of services? And I'll give another example. We currently have a paralegal of ours. She had to work for one of the larger. She worked for one of the larger law firms for a number of years. A multi-state, multinational law firm, and they shipped a lot of their high-end green cards, the self-sponsored green cards. They didn't do it here in the United States. Instead, they outsourced it to India. They had departments that were completely, so you're paying for brand name legal service, if you would, but a lot of the grunt work, rather than being done by legal assistants or paralegals here, the majority of that's being sent to India. And what ends up happening is their costs are much. They can offer services lower than we do, just because of the difference in salary. Because we'll pay a higher salary here than you would pay over there.
Absolutely.
And what ends up becoming and so I imagine that these other consulting companies are doing something similar, where they can tell an oil and gas company, okay, give us a contract for X dollar amount. We guarantee to provide X number of services for immigration. Imagine they have a portfolio of services, one of them being immigration. And then they can perhaps undercut a lot of the other law firms just because you have a large multinational consulting company with offices worldwide, that they probably can set up, they probably can streamline the process and push salaries down, because for the most part, including my own, salaries tend to be the largest cost of my business. So you can push down the salary by outsourcing to another country, then great. It's certainly an option to make a consultant's company more competitive or more enticing for hiring than a law firm. So there are challenges that we face as immigration lawyers in terms of people offering services, and then that also, again, might be a reflection, might be a difference of why you might see an increase in the number of denials than you might have, let's say, 15 years ago. And certainly probably still exists. At least it's not as well. Having been an attorney for as long as I have, I haven't heard the same stories then that I do now. Might be just an awareness, just might be with the people who I interact with, but it's very different from what it was before. Okay,
Interesting. And going back to the individuals and families that you help with their immigration processes, what advice would you give them when they start? Like, which door should they knock first? Because I've heard people say, I don't know where to start, and they feel a little lost.
Well, so when it comes, it depends on the easiest way to ever come into an office and ask for advice. If a person has some type of career, if they have some, bring a resume, because if that's true, if they have a resume, it makes it simple to kind of look through as, okay, you might be able to qualify for a visa, for a green card. People who bring in their own immigration history, how many times have been in the U.S. legally or illegal, it makes it helpful. The process, the value of a quality law firm, whether us or anybody else, is that the question should eventually lead to some type of truth of what can be done. Like for us, we have a very standard process in which we approach any given case, whether it's removal defense, deportation defense, in other words, family-based immigration or employment-based immigration. I want to know nationality. I want to know about the family dynamics. I want to know how many times they've been to the U.S., what type of immigration status that they have. Has the person any type of education? Have they wanted, if not, what type of work have they done? Is it skilled or unskilled? Even unskilled, have they started their own business? Those types of questions those basic questions can basically build out a decision tree. This is where we can go. And so bringing information like that is very helpful, but more than anything else, it's letting the individual tell their story, but not in a unscripted manner, but in a set of questions that can basically build out, okay, you can go option 1, 2, or 3. Or if there are no options, that's okay. Sometimes there isn't something there, at least in our perspective. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody should just give up and not seek a second opinion. That's okay. We've gotten plenty of people who have come through our office who have asked for a second opinion. And if the attorney or the law firm is doing a good job, I'll tell them, just stick to who you have. Don't hire us. You don't need to. It's not worth it. But if there's a different strategy and I see that strategy is like, look, this is my opinion. I don't know why he or she, your other attorney, chose the current strategy, but this is a better one, in my opinion. Recently, I'll give you an example. We recently had a foreign national from Central America, had a very illustrious background in music.
Okay.
Had won awards, had won a number of achievements.
Right.
A very strong EB-1A, just screamed, hey, we can get you a green card basically in about a year if we follow this process. And asked, okay, so what did, you had another attorney, are you still in some process? And his response was, oh, we went with another process, a national interest waiver. And I looked at it, I was like, I don't understand that you clearly have had a good career, which is a reason we can do an EB-1A, versus I'm looking at a national interest waiver, which I have to demonstrate that you have some type of special skill that's needed in the United States, and not to be difficult, but there's plenty of people who are in your industry. It doesn't make you stand out, not in terms of need, but in career, yeah, we can make that work all day, every day. And so he hired us. Unfortunately, he had spent money on his prior attorney, and maybe it'll work out, maybe not. But the getting started, going back to your original question, the way to get started is at least as a foreign national talking to an attorney or a representative and being able to provide information in a very organized manner. Because if it's just open-ended, it's like asking your kids. Kids might be 5, 6, 7, and asking about their day, and they'll tell you about their entire day, start to finish, what they ate, what they wore, who they talked to, what letters of the alphabet they learned. And like, no, I wasn't asking for a play-by-play. I'm asking for kind of big picture. And so being able to direct your child just like you can direct a potential new client is important, because that way the person who came to visit can have some type of strategy. And while they can go to other firms, the comparison should be not just what's the cost difference, but where is it that you want to be? Where are you now? And do you have a clear plan of getting to what your goal ultimately is, whether we're talking 1 month, 1 year, or a handful of years?
Right. No, I understand. When people decide to or consider doing things on their own, what are the risks of going with the process without the guidance of a lawyer like yourself or a law firm, trying to navigate the system on your own? How risky is that?
Well, so at the very basic level, no one's required to have a lawyer. And there's no federal or state rule that says you must have a lawyer if you're doing immigration.
Right.
But there are reasons that people will hire lawyers, and that's because the details matter. Somebody, I can think of one lady in particular. Husband was American. She was from Canada. She was in the health service industry, and they had filed their own paperwork. But this process was done about they did this themselves 2015, 2016. So the processing time was much shorter than it is today. And they languished for 3 years in limbo. She never got her interview. They would call immigration services, and immigration services says, we're not going to give you legal advice. And so they continue to try to do things by themselves. And so they come to me as like, look, we've tried to do this themselves. Here's some paperwork. That's not being resolved. What's the problem? And I look through the paperwork and I find an error. They basically checked off the wrong box. And yes, I've oversimplified it, but in most respects, this was a checkbox. And by them filing it on their own, yeah, they saved money initially, but they wasted 3 years of their life that they're now paying back. And that's the challenge for foreign nationals. It's not just form filling, but it is losing time, because none of us can ever buy back time. Not even Jeff Bezos, not Elon Musk, not Bill Gates. And so the value. So what an experienced firm that actually focuses on immigration law, not an attorney who does everything, a little bit of bankruptcy, a little of family, a little of criminal, a little of civil. There are attorneys out there like that, and that's okay. They can choose to be that way. We very much focus within the immigration context. We do business immigration, so we know some business law and real estate law, but it's pretty much within the context of immigration. And so the idea is that the foreign national hires somebody who has experience to move a case along, because otherwise, by doing it themselves, they can screw it up. They can lose time, or even worse, it's too late to fix them. Something that we've run into before is perhaps one of the better examples is foreign nationals, for one reason or another, would come to the United States without inspection, or better known as illegally. They might have paid a coyote $10,000, $20,000 to get them across the border. They get caught by Border Patrol, and they're put into deportation proceedings. And there are certain points in which an attorney can really help prepare the application, prepare the applicant, and prepare the person for appearing before a judge and getting certain paperwork done. But once those opportunities have gone through, you can't go back and fix it there. You exhaust the appeal process. And so what tends to be a sad fact of life is that people will call us after they've done everything. It's like, okay, now I'm ready to hire an attorney. What can you do for me? And sometimes the answer is, I can't do anything for you. No attorney. You're welcome to call and ask for a second opinion. But for at least from what you're presenting, there's no option. There's nothing that we can do for you. We're sorry. And so
it's too late.
And that's basically it. It's in some ways, immigration can be forgiving. There's certain things you can do to fix the problem. But sometimes it's the equivalent of trying to do your own dental work. You can do your own dental work. There's no requirement that you use a dentist to try to fix your own teeth. But if you screw up, you chop off a part of a tooth, break it.
There's no turning back.
There's no turning back. And so it's something that immigration can be done by themselves. I met people who've done a very good job of putting together their own paperwork, and might make excellent attorneys in the future. But the question being, does a person have the time, the energy, and the focus to do their own paperwork? Because if they do, great, they can do it. But if they don't, then just hire out. It's the same reason that most of us will pay for service. For myself, as simple examples, I used to do my own lawn. When I was younger, I mowed the lawn for my parents. When I first moved to the area, I would do my own lawn. But as I've gotten more kids, as life has gotten busier, I'm willing to pay the money just to get it done because I don't have the time. Yeah, it's something
Right.
simple. It's pushing a lawnmower. There's nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
It's not rocket science.
It doesn't require a license. It doesn't require high
Yeah.
levels of training. But I'm still willing to pay for the service because I don't have the time. Same respect for immigration. Yeah, you could do it. Yeah, you could sit down, get the books, get the manuals, do some workshops, do some webinars. You might become an expert in something, and it's great. But if the person doesn't want to spend the time, then just hire. It's like everything
It's
else.
that simple. Yeah.
You're buying back your time. What's your time worth?
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Absolutely. It's priceless. And while you talk about the foreign nationals, what countries are your clients from? The clients you represent, what languages do they speak? What is
I
your
would
experience with that?
I would say we have a very high percentage of both Canadian and Mexican.
Okay.
Canada, there's a large number of Canadians that want to move here to the U.S. just because of the economics of Canada, the weather,
Yeah.
political disagreements. People just want to move down. Same with Mexico. Outside of it being to the border of the U.S., Houston's such a magnet for foreign nationals. It just makes sense. Outside of those two countries, I would say we get a significant number of Colombians, Venezuelans, British, German, Nigerian, and for a while we were getting quite a bit of Pakistani and Indian nationals. Right now, we've seen, of any nationality, we've seen an uptick in Chinese nationals, mainly when it comes to pilots. There's a special category that exists out there for foreign nationals who are experienced pilots. They have a certain number of hours, a degree, certain credentials, and also can be or currently do have an FAA license. That we can. There is a pathway, not a guarantee, but there's a pathway to get a green card through that. And considering that the U.S. market pays significantly better for pilots than almost any other country in the world, there's a huge demand for foreign nationals to come here, especially given China. There's far more opportunities for Chinese national pilots here in the United States in their home country. So
Wow.
right now I've seen an uptick in that, and I think it's just reflective of the economic reality.
Wow, that's very, very interesting. I would have never guessed. And and can you tell us a little bit how a certified translation can impact the outcome of an immigration case?
Oh yeah, that's simple. It's the difference between using Google Translate
Right.
and having a professional. So the reason that we use precise translations for a number of years is because you guys know what you're doing. Because you can always tell the difference between somebody who's used Google Translate or some other type of online free service, because context matters. What something might be phrased in one way, it might be a colloquial phrase, and not all phrases are the same. You and I both know that dialects will also matter. Somebody who speaks Mexican Spanish versus Cuban Spanish versus Argentinian Spanish.
Big difference.
Phrases will have a different connotation behind it. And so when you're trying to apply for employment immigration, or especially removal defense, deportation defense, you want to be precise, not kind of close.
Right.
Because the meaning can be interpreted, because whatever language it was in, the original language was in, when we're dealing with the American immigration system, everything's done in English. So whether good or bad, whether the translation was proper or not, it makes a difference. It's the same reason that people always, like, I personally have lived in China for many, many years ago, and I always found it funny when it came to the English translations
From
in China.
Chinese. Yeah.
Because I would see them,
know,
and I remember there were, we were going through the western part of Beijing. There are some historical areas, and they were trying to encourage people to be silent, to indicate that this was a historical area, and please be silent. But the translation was, "Be silent, or else the dead will rise."
Okay.
It was this really odd translation, and it felt like somebody had done a very poor job of doing the translation
my God.
from Mandarin Chinese to English
To
using
English.
Google or whatever search engine
Yeah.
was. So yeah, the details matter, precision matters, and so having a precise translation can certainly make the difference between getting something approved versus being rejected and having to restart the process all over again.
Yeah. No, I agree. Sometimes we have people telling us, well, I can do this myself, but what is the difference? Well, and like you just said, if you have the time, because it's also a full-time job, right?
Right.
And so not everybody has the time, and not everybody knows how to do it. And it's one of those things that people think that anybody can do it just because they're bilingual, or and the truth is, it's not as easy as that. And especially for legal matters, you don't want to risk it.
Right.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no. Before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, what would you tell the young people looking to build a career as an immigration lawyer?
I would say that being any career, what makes immigration law fun is the puzzle behind it. Every case, not every case is equal. Very cases are similar. You can have two individuals with very similar career trajectory, history, but there's always something different. And so I find the process of putting together a puzzle, trying to take where somebody is now and where they want to be, and how do we get them there? Because it's a strategy. If people like strategy, that's great. Being detail oriented is great. It's not just about arguing. I've heard people say, "Oh, I would make a great attorney because I like to argue." And that's not it. It's being persuasive. And so immigration law, a lot of it is reading, a lot of it's study, and it's applying it. Now, if that's the person that you are, then great. Being a lawyer might be great. And some people may think that they want to do immigration law, and as they go through law school, as they get exposed to other areas, they may find that there's something else that they like better, and that's okay. But the law rewards those who like strategy, who like puzzles, who like details. It's a terrible field to be if you want to be not doing that. Even if you're talking to somebody who's a litigator, somebody who does trial work, they might be fond of juries. They still put into time to know the law, to know who they're going against, what the issues are. So it's a rewarding field, but it's only rewarding for those who understand what they're getting into. It's a terrible field if they're looking for something that's not that.
Right. No, totally. It's great. I love it the way you describe it. It's a puzzle, and so it keeps your mind active, just trying to read all the possibilities and present it to the client. And I think that makes it exciting and never boring. I bet you don't have a boring day in your life.
Nope, never do. Never do. So,
Luis, well, we sincerely appreciate your time sharing your experience and knowledge today. And it's clear to me that your clients are in excellent hands. And it's been a pleasure working with your clients all these years. And I wish you more success.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation. And I look forward to talking to you again.
Absolutely, Luis. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.